It's Brian Mudd. This is my cheat sheet for Friday, January 18th. Alright, I enjoy going down the path of what I'm going to go down about as little as anything I've ever put up here on the cheat sheet. I take that back. We went through some pretty rough times in the fall of 2008, early 2009. But I don't get any joy in doing this for one very big reason. The objective in what I am doing with the gun law versus myth is simply trying to put to bed some misinformation that's going around. It's not based on necessarily giving you some piece of information that's not already out there and is going to keep you ahead of the curve. But it is designed to be helpful, and ultimately that's what we always try to do, is be helpful, useful, and hopefully repeatable. This week, I have been faced with, we might say, a fair amount of negative mail from my fellow gun owners, folks who support the Second Amendment. One of the things that I always do is, regardless of what the story is, I always say there are two sides to every story, there's one side to every fact. And I always try to approach everything with an analytical point of view, genuinely. And if you hear an opinion, that's after I've presented analytical information. And so my goal here is not to try to help the administration pass more stringent gun control. One of the pieces that I did point out that there I thought could be common ground, that we could find some kind of synergy on being able to shore up some loopholes, was on the federal gun law. You see, the sales laws are different depending upon what state you're in. From the federal level, not just the state level, there are 50 different sets of state law plus the District of Columbia. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the way the federal gun control laws are administered. There are 3 different sets. I'll have a link to it on the physical cheat sheet just below so you can take a look at that. But the bigger one, and this is the one that I have been receiving a lot of mail from and have had a lot of very nasty things said to me, actually, is pertaining to the difference in private sale and what oftentimes can happen in gun shows. I mentioned that there are differences in federal law, and there are many people that in no uncertain terms will say that's absolutely wrong, don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just aiding the left in trying to have guns taken away. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, because here's the reality of anything. All you have in this world when you're trying to convince people of your opinion is your credibility. If you don't have credibility with people, once they find out that you've been wrong about something, are they ever going to listen to you again on that issue or any others? A lot of people won't. I tend not to listen to people. You lack credibility with me. Why am I going to take you seriously? And so this is really much more about you, if you do want to try to protect your own gun rights in the Second Amendment, to protect your own credibility, so you have credibility in discussing these issues, regardless of what your view is. Here's something that's very important. There was a provision put into the 1968 Gun Control Act that only mandated that those that operate in the business, and that's a direct quote from the law, must register with the feds. Meaning that any of the federal gun law that applies, which later, where this really came into play, was with the Brady law in the 90s. Those provisions only apply if you're in the business of selling guns. So if you're a private seller, but not deemed to be in the business, and you've not registered with the feds, well, guess what? There are no mandated background checks. There are no mandated waiting periods, potentially, if the information has been verified instantly. And a lot of times, what can happen, it depends on the gun show regs and rules. It also depends on the laws in the states. But you could have, at gun shows, private sellers selling right alongside the dealers. The dealers have to adhere to the federal law. The private sellers, or the folks that are riding under the guise of not being in the business, you don't have to adhere to any of that. That is simply a matter of fact. And I have the links to all the information and the laws on the physical cheat sheet. So I hope that's helpful. 2 sides to every story, 1 side to every fact. It's indisputable. And it's not anything that is part of my plan to help take away your gun rights. Again, I'm a proud gun owner and a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, but we've got to have clarity when we're discussing this issue, because if it's all based on emotion, well, guess what? If you're a supporter of the Second Amendment, you're going to look bad when the information you're sharing with people and trying to win arguments with is incorrect. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me get on some stuff I actually like to talk about now. How much is the White House worth? Zillow says $294 million. Not bad. So anyway, Zestimates. One of the things is, look, the truth of the matter is, what your home is worth is what somebody's willing to pay today for it. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less. And so, one of the things that I oftentimes will caution against, putting a firm dollar amount on your primary residence unless you're looking to sell it. But when you are, you oftentimes will go to Zillow. And I've talked recently about how Zillow, in many cases, has actually been negatively misleading people in our area recently. We've seen this play out many times over, including recently even with Jim Edwards. He's getting ready to sell his home. It looks like he might be able to obtain about 10% more than what the current Zestimate for his home actually says it's worth. And you continue to see that process play out. So one of the things as we're continuing to see this real estate recovery, you obviously aren't selling the White House. First thing is, don't make assumptions about what your home is worth. Get a qualified opinion from a real estate professional first before making that judgment. Because one of the other things we're finding, that nearly a quarter of the people right now that are listing that think they're short sale candidates are actually not, and you're equity sellers. So there's much better news to be had there. A couple quick hitters. If you're under the age of 55, something you need to be paying attention to, Social Security and Medicare. The idea of raising the age and means testing is not altogether new, but the Business Roundtable stepping in and recommending it is. The Business Roundtable is one of the preeminent groups of business leaders representing executives from top companies from around this country and in some cases even the world. You have recommendations they put out this week to means test not only Medicare but even Social Security, which I disagree means testing Social Security, but that's for another day. But they're also talking about raising the ages by 3 years. So if you're under the age of 55, this has been the barometer under which politicians have been willing to examine this before. You need to watch this carefully because we're seeing new and influential groups step in and influence Washington on that particular issue. Plenty more for you on the Fiscal Cheat Sheet. Enjoy your day, your weekend. We are off for MLK Day, and we will see you on Tuesday.